my name is Shayna Mace, and I am Editorial Director with Brava Magazine. Thank you for joining us today, along with Summit Credit Union, for today's virtual panel discussion on finding your superpower for change and addressing money and confidence. Today, we'll be breaking down economic barriers for women and helping you overcome financial trauma and stress to transport you to a state of empowerment. We'll discuss 3 strategies for building financial confidence, which will in turn give you the power to self-advocate and take action in your finances. Before I introduce our panelists, I wanted to let you know that on your screen right now, you can submit questions for our Q&A at the end of our panel discussion. So you'll see that on your screen, so feel free throughout our discussion to submit some questions for the Q&A period at the end. Now on to our panelists. Amy Crow is a financial education specialist at Summit Credit Union. She's a personal finance expert with 20 years of experience in writing, speaking, and educating about money. Her thoughts, ideas, and advice have been featured on television, in print, and online magazines, on podcasts, at conferences and expo stages, and in panels like today, of course. With a degree in communications from UW-Stevens Point, Amy started her career in marketing financial services at Summit Credit Union, and today leads their award-winning signature community financial education program that I'm sure you've heard about, Project Money and Project Teen Money. Hello, Amy.
Thanks for having me.
Next to Amy is Nancy Calso. She ignites confidence and courage in women who want to unleash their full potential. She's a professional certified coach and business consultant and facilitator. Nancy believes that everyone deserves someone in their corner. Women often carry a mind full of what Nancy calls negative, nagging notions. She guides clients in shifting from a mind full of mindfulness by focusing on what is getting in your way of being and believing in yourself. Nancy's 30-plus career years in the financial industry, many of which were here at Summit Credit Union, give her insight on the financial fears that stop us from achieving our dreams. Hello, Nancy.
Hello, and thank you for having me here. This is very fun.
Thank you for being here. Lanice McGee is District Director for the Department of Workforce Development. She's known to spark motivation that lights up a room. With a BA from Fisk University and an MS from Springfield College, Lanice is also an award-winning author and TEDx speaker. Hello, Lanice.
Hi, thanks for having me. Excited to be here with you guys.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, Sarah Campagna. She is Managing VP of Financial Empowerment at Summit Credit Union. Sarah's a driven leader and coach with a passion for purposeful work that directly influences financial well-being. In her role as Managing Vice President of Financial Empowerment at Summit Credit Union, she supports and develops her team of financial educators and coaches. She oversees Summit's award-winning programs that bring actionable financial education to members, like Financial Wellness for Employees, a workplace financial wellness program. Hello, Sarah.
Hello. Thank you for allowing us this time today. Excited to get started.
Yeah, and actually, I would like to turn the panel over to Sarah with Summit Credit Union, who will begin our panel discussion with these 4 amazing women. Sarah?
Thank you so much, Shayna. And welcome, everyone. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to join us for this impactful conversation around women and confidence and money, right? We have 3 talented panelists with us today that are going to share their insights and wisdom around this topic. We'll dive a little bit into the barriers that women face, but we'll make sure to get some action items to you as well. But first, I wanted to level set why we're having this conversation today, why we felt this was an important topic. And Forbes actually just issued a research article in the beginning of this month, in October, that women's financial health hit a 5-year low. In fact, 59% of women surveyed by Ellevest report worrying about their finances at least once a week, and 43% of women are actively worrying about money at least once a day. So women are confronted with additional obstacles like the gender pay gap, the glass ceiling, lack of venture capital funds for female entrepreneurs, responsibility of household duties, the list goes on, right? Just to name a few. But we're not going to just stand by, right? And not take action. This is the Empower Lunch Hour. We're going to talk about how we can overcome those, how we can stand up for ourselves and begin to take action. So we're going to share some powerful action steps, perspectives, and resources that you can implement today. So let's get started. Grab your pen and paper, as mentioned before, because there's going to be some tips. And please make sure that you chat in some questions. We'd love to answer your specific questions at the end of this session. So Lanice, we're going to start with you today. You're helping women navigate this every day in your current role. What are some of the barriers women are facing in the workforce today?
That's a great question, and it's multi-leveled, and you mentioned some of those already. And so I'll dive into a little bit of some of the barriers that women are facing. One, of course, being lack of opportunity to see themselves with the mindset that I should apply for this, with the mindset of I am capable, I am able, and I should do this. And so it really starts with a mindset for women. And that goes back to a perception and a belief. And this is not just a perception and belief that men have, but women have it as well. We see certain roles as masculine or feminine. And so if you see a role, because the role has been carried out by a man, you will tend to have characteristics that a man is the one that should do those roles. So we have to really work on our perception and beliefs of who is capable of doing those type of positions. If I were to name off a general in the military, the president.
I'm going to give you this just for a little bit more sound.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. We're losing you.
All right.
We want to share this information, so thank you.
So if I were to call out different roles, automatically, what do you vision that role is? And if you can't vision yourself in that role, will you even go for it? And so that is a barrier. But the good thing about barriers, and I use the example of if you're driving down a road, you're leaving home, going to work, and there's a barrier, you're not going to turn around and not go to work. You're going to figure out, okay, first of all, is this temporary? What's going on? What is the detour? And so I think that's how we have to continue to navigate the workforce. So definitely our beliefs and our perception is one. And with that, having the flexibility. There was a movie I was watching about, and I've watched several movies where there's a job role of a law firm. And normally the person is trying to make partner. And who do you see in that role? Even what we see on TV, it's a male. And then the perception is, well, did you work hard? Did you stay longer? Did you do this to make partner? Well, what if a woman wants to make partner? Do we assume that because she maybe has a family, she's not willing or available to travel? Do we even ask those questions? We make those assumptions automatically because when you look at a woman, and there are women who are leading their families as a single mother, right? She's a breadwinner, but we also look at her as a caregiver. So when you think of someone as a caregiver, you already put limitations on what they may be able to do. When you look at a male, he can say, I have a wife and children. He's a breadwinner. You might not even associate him as a caregiver. I could go on and on about this, but there are those beliefs. So we have to offer flexibility. We have to ask and not assume that a woman would not be able to do the role. There's, of course, race that plays in the part. So as a woman, you have your concerns just as a woman, but then even as we go into culture and race, there's a whole nother barrier that there are multiple levels of this. And so the final one that I will share is networking. When we think about when people are elevated to different positions, a lot of that happens before the formal interview happens or anything that is formal that happens. It happens on the golf course, right? It happens at the sport event. It happens after work at the social hour. Do we see a lot of women in those networking opportunities, right? If they're not there, the decision is being made and their voice has not even been heard. that haven't even had the opportunity. When it comes to the boardroom, that's a formality. The decision was made on the golf course. So how do we get past the barrier of women not even being invited? See, and when we have this leadership example of so many men in these roles, right? They're making these decisions, healthcare. I mean, there's so many different, it's across all sectors. We don't see enough women representation there, and they're making decision that affects a voice that's absent. And so those are some barriers, but definitely, again, there's definitely ways that we can navigate it like this, you know, taking time to have the discussion because we have unconscious biases, right? And so if you're listening to this and you're thinking to yourself, wow, I kind of thought that too. That's an unconscious bias that you need to confront and say, you know what? Now I need to mind shift. And I know Nancy really goes into that. How can I do that? So thank you. I know I probably went a little long on that.
Such a great answer. And I think the first thing when you said about just the limitations that we give into roles, what I was thinking of is we know that women, right, when they see a job posting, if you don't feel confident about every single bullet point or skill that they're looking for, we're less likely to apply, right? And I have heard that men can identify with maybe 2 of those bullet points and they're ready to apply. So that was what first came to mind for me, but just some additional biases I think I need to unpack too that you shared there. So thank you so much, Lanice. Amy, I saw you nodding quite a bit through that conversation. I'd like to get your take on this. Well, how do these barriers impact women's confidence when it comes to their financial wellness or well-being?
Summit's done a ton of research and work in this area, and what intrigues me so much is what Lanice, you said. If we're not seeing these women in these roles, that's the first thing in terms of confidence, being able to see someone else succeed and do that. We have a slide up, and I wanted to share this. 48% of women are confident with their money. Only 28% feel empowered to act. That's really powerful. And when you're talking about jobs, you're talking about negotiations. We've done work in the area of understanding the poverty that women feel in retirement. Now, my grandma is 102. She's worried about, I know, right? 102, love her. She's worried about the money running out in March. And she had a husband with a pension and all of these types of things. So we have the gender pay gap. We have the racial pay gap. We've done some numbers, and these were shocking to me. From starting at the 83 cents on a dollar that we may compare to a white man, that is $1.6 million that we don't have in retirement. That means we're not opening up certificates, we're not opening up money market accounts, we're not investing outside of our 401ks, 401(3)Bs. And that's the part of things that when we're not looking and having the wealth, which actually equates to about $400 extra dollars every paycheck, $800 a month. What would you do with an extra $800 a month? So we think about these things and we think about the barriers. Women live longer. We are heads of household, right, Lanice? And we're making those decisions, and we have everyone trying to get on our time. And we have something that I recently learned about, which is the pink tax. So when you think about the consumeristic society and all the things that we have to deal with, we're actually paying a tax on women's beauty products more than a man. And so on the men's beauty products, right? So all of these things combined affects our financial wellness. It affects our financial stress. And in fact, we have PTSD type trauma from some of these financial things that have happened to us, whether it is inequitable pay, whether it is a tornado, a hurricane, a fire, whether it is the trauma of not knowing your worth and being able to stand up for yourself. Other traumas could be unemployment due to the pandemic. Women have taken themselves out of the workforce in the pandemic. And every time we do that, whether it's in or outside of that pandemic, we are not contributing to a retirement account. And so a tip before I stop talking is that if you are a stay-at-home mom, if you are someone who's working a part-time job, to give yourself the flexibility for that work-life balance, I highly encourage you to open up an investment account, a money market, or a certificate so that you are contributing to some sort of retirement outside of a pension that you or a retirement account that you would get as part of an employment package.
Thank you, Amy. The first thing that came to mind for me is not only do we have the pay gap, right, anywhere from 82 cents to 55 cents, depending on demographics, right? we have the pink tax, but now we're also dealing with inflation. So how is that compounding for us as women, right? Nancy, we haven't heard from you. I don't have a specific question for you yet, but anything you want to weigh in on these obstacles and barriers that women are facing?
Wow, yeah. I mean, there's so much to already unpack, right? Just hearing this and the history and where do these things come from, right? And our beliefs come from what we've experienced and what we've been told, what we see. So like you were mentioning, we see on the movies that it's male in these roles. So is that possible for me? And we start to create these beliefs around that. And then, like with the pandemic, when women do step out of the work environment to care for a family, because now they're taking care of their kids at home and, they're self-studying, right? That loss, that's a belief that, well, it should be the female, right? I should do this. I'm the caretaker. And so I like to call that, and many of you have probably heard this, is we should on ourselves. I should do that. When, there's there's other possibilities, but we tend to claim it for ourselves as the owner of that.
I love that and hate that. I should on myself all the time. So thank you for sharing that. Lenise, let's transition back to you. What can women do to understand their value and worth? I know this is such an important topic to you, and you've done work in this.
Definitely. So I like to have acronyms because acronyms can help us remember. And so when we think about our value and our worth, I like to say you have to have hot wins. So how do you win with your value and your worth? And so we start with the H. How? How are you demonstrating self-love and self-value? How does that show up for you? And how consistent is it? How important is it, and how much do you value it? And when you do that, think about, how do you feel afterwards? How are you able to communicate differently? How are you able to love differently? How are you able to extend yourself differently when you know how you actually show up for yourself? And the O is for observations. So we have to take time to observe, right? Like, look at other people as an example. I love what you said. We should on ourselves, right? What else can someone be doing that I've taken on? How could I be doing this differently? Before I say yes, let me observe and see what I'm saying yes to. Do I have time for that? Do I have space for that? And then the T is for treat. How do you treat someone that you value, that you esteem? How do you show up for them? And then I ask you to ask yourself, do you treat yourself the same way? Do you show up for yourself? Do you see yourself as high value, high respect, that you're deserving of a break, that you're deserving of a position, that you're deserving to breathe and relax? So the same treatment that you give those that you value, you need to treat yourself the same way. And if you're not, how does that look differently? What do you do? Then we have the W, the words. And I think you kind of talked a little bit about this, but what words are we speaking? What words are we sharing? I've talked to so many people, and sometimes when they share about something that is troubling them, it's something that was said years and years ago. We carry that weight with us. And so we make those words our own. They become our belief. They become our truth. And then not only have we heard them, now we're speaking them. And so even earlier, I said something with words. I said guys, versus ladies or us. So I still am mindful, I said guys, what should I have said, But when it comes to yourself and self-value, what are you saying to yourself, and what have you made to be true? That is probably not. And some things are true. Let me just say, some things are true, like, oh, that may be true. However, I'm working towards A, B, and C, right? And then I is invest Invest in yourself. Self-love means that it's okay for me to take an hour break to listen to this on how I'm going to self-love and self-care for myself. How am I going to invest, not just for my children, but I might be 102 years old, right? And I don't want at 102 me worrying about my money running out by March. Invest. How much of that money are you saving for yourself? How much money do you put aside for your self-care? That should be part of your budget, right? And we're almost done, you guys. Nouns. We getting these hot winds in, okay? Nouns. And we all know the definitions of nouns: people, places, and things. We put so much weight in our value on people, places, and things. What do people believe about me? What do people say about me? If they don't believe I'm worthy, then am I not worthy? These things that I have, what if I lose my house? What if I lose my car? What if I lost a child? This is so true. This happens. And people lose themselves. And it's like tragedy can happen, but you still have value. You are more than just a mother. You are more than just a wife. You are more than just a friend. You are more than a job title. You know, you are more beyond that which a noun has placed on you. So we have to be very, very mindful of the nouns and how we allow them to guide our decisions and our directions. And the S, hot winds, is stop. Stop sabotaging yourself. Stop not applying, right? Counting ourselves out before we even looked why we should be counted in. Stop comparing. We have this thing of comparing, and stop allowing milestones to be a barrier in your life. By 40, I should have been this. By 30, I should have been this. Whatever your age is, we have all these. I've been at the company 5 years. I should stop. Stop. What can we do? It's okay to admire and look forward as a gauge, but I don't compare because you have not walked in my shoes. I have not walked in yours. So stop comparing and have those hot winds.
So powerful. I love the acronym too, to help us remember. I took so much away from what you just said. I think the first thing I thought of is women tend to be such givers. How do we give to ourselves? Because we don't do that, right? We mother and we care about everybody else and bring them in, but how do we help take care of ourselves? I think also what I heard you say is comparison. We say a lot in our work that comparison is the thief of joy.
Oh, yes.
Right?
That's really good.
So, wow, thank you so much for sharing that. Nancy, when we were prepping, we talked a little bit about, you actually shared something with me that was really powerful, and it came with some good news and some bad news. And that question was around, is it possible to build confidence by erasing our fears? Talking about fears a little bit. So could you share a little bit?
Yeah, I'd love to. And before I do that, I just want to say I could practically I wanted to jump up and hug Lenny, so she was just sharing that, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm like, yeah, there's the passion and the fuel that as women we all need. We need to believe in ourselves. And when we can show up that way and advocate for ourselves, that is part of building the confidence. So thank you for just setting the stage for that. So back to the fear question, right? The question was how can we erase these fears? And so I like to say that there's good news and there's bad news. And so I'm going to start with the bad news, the not so bad news, really. And that is we can't erase our fears. And that is part of our humanness. That is, and you might have heard of fight, flight, or, freeze, whatever, those types of things. But it is part of our humanness. We do have fears. We have an initial reaction to a lot of situations. The good news is that we don't want to erase our fears. And here's why. So if you think of trying to erase your fears, I think of a dry erase board, right? And if you write all your fears up there, you can just magically make them disappear, right? And that's kind of ignoring them or squashing them down. And as women, we tend to do that. We squash our emotions. And so, so most people don't even write them on the board. So yeah, if you could erase your fears, first you got to write them on the board, right? But you can't erase your fears. So I like you to think about this instead as an alert. So think of a smoke detector. Now, I don't know about you, but my smoke detector has gone off in my house numerous times when there is no fire. There isn't even smoke. Sometimes it, maybe it's just a little steam from a pot, and I'm like, oh, here we go again, right? However, that's an alert, and that's what fear is for us. It is this eye-opening, okay, I feel a fear. Oop, Now we can shift from fear to how we want to feel about that. The fear is the original emotion. Then we can shift to, now, how do I want to choose to feel about this fear? Is it real? Is this a real fear? And yeah, this is why we don't want to erase our fears, because some fears are real. So we want to pay attention to that. And so erasing our fear is not the answer, or squashing it down is not the answer. It's having awareness to what is showing up and what we want to pay attention to in that, how it can serve us, and how it can bring into the light what we might want to change about this particular situation.
So it's really looking at your fears as kind of the building, like how that alerted us and how we can learn from it and how it can help serve us moving forward almost, right?
Yeah.
Instead of erasing it or ignoring it.
Yeah.
I love that so much. Thank you, Nancy, for really breaking that down. And I think that's such an important step in building confidence is being able to acknowledge your fears. And then some of them are gifts, right? Yeah. They aren't all bad. And so how we look at them and shift that thought process about words and different things really starts to build that confidence. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Well, Amy, I'm going to move over to you. At Summit, we talk about steps women can take to empower and equip themselves. So I want to move into a little bit more inspiring action here. We're starting to transition into here's what we're dealing with, what's some things we can start to do. So what can you share with us that someone can do to feel more confident with their money?
I think it starts with what both these talented ladies said, is that we need to claim our worth and we need to overcome our fears. But we have to understand and recognize that potential financial, that trauma that we've had, that trauma is actually based in our stress and our body reaction to our low balance in our checking account, the low balance of our savings account, the high debt that we have. And that all affects our financial wellness and feeling positive and thinking positive about our finances, our worth, and our confidence. So the biggest thing is, and I'm going to shift a little bit because I wanted to make this transition, is that we need to ask questions. And how many of you were a 4th grade little girl afraid to ask a math question? That was me. I didn't raise my hand. I wanted to be as small as I possibly could because I didn't want to be wrong. And women, we make decisions holistically. We ask a lot of questions because we don't want to be wrong. We also are caregivers, like you said, Sarah, and we want to make the best darn decision that we can for ourselves and for our families, and that leads to inaction. And so that's why it's so important, because based on the fears that Nancy was saying, when we're fearful, we're in action. So being more confident with your money is asking questions. What don't you know? That's setting up a meeting with a financial coach or a life coach, setting up a financial planner conversation, and then finding the right resource that feels good to you, because women are often ignored and pushed aside in the marketplace. And when that happens to you, do not give up, stand up, find your superpower, and find someone who will listen to you and will give you the advice based on your financial situation and what's happened to you and your relationship with money to help you push through. Because creating a plan then, based on that information, is going to increase your confidence. So number 1 is the asking of the question. Number 2 is building a plan, which, Lanice, it is the budget, which no one likes to hear the word budget. Come on. So I say it's categorizing your expenses to your values. Let me repeat that. Categorizing your expenses to your values gives you confidence. Now, you might need to figure out how to get rid of some debt, how to increase your savings. That's what coaching is for. But it is then about what is so important to you. Finding that new job, whatever that might be. And so those are the top 2 things in terms of building confidence. Well, 3, because I started out with the emotions, right? Asking questions, building a plan, and then you need to take the steps to make that plan happen.
Thank you so much for that, Amy. Lanice, you shared your acronym with us, which was definitely some action items and things to think about. I think your insights around confidence are tied directly more to communication and how we talk to ourselves and out loud. Do you have a tip to share specifically on how we can improve our self-confidence through communication?
I'm going to piggyback off of what Amy said. She talked about asking questions. And I think of an example of when someone came to me about a position. It was a deputy position in a different company. And they said, I want you to interview for this position. And the first thing I asked, I wonder if you guys can guess what I asked. Can you send me the job description? That was the first question I asked. Why did I ask that? And you talked about this. I wanted to see, did I fit into the position? What did I need to do to make sure that I aligned to the position? Now, I would love for people to consider in their communication is asking different questions. I was already valued as, they didn't say fill out the application, they said interview. I was going to fill out the application later. But I should have asked, well, let me not shit on myself. What I should have considered asking was, how do you see me fitting in this position? What qualities does this role require that you see that I'm a great fit at? Are there any qualities that you may think that I can improve in to make sure that I do a great job in this role? And later comes the description, because that will help you in your communication. But really, what questions are we asking that already puts us where we're devaluing ourselves? So really, you know, the person who told me about the position when I asked about it, they said, the check marks are a suggestion. You know, we would love for you to have this, but if you don't, that's okay, you know, because you have, you know, the requirements, which is the baseline of leadership and things of that nature. Everything else you can learn or you will grow in. And so that kind of did a mind shift for me as well. And so communication is so important. Are you going to live with the regret, or are you willing to take the risk? It's one or the other. And so I want to encourage everybody to take that risk, bet on yourself, and have the confidence in yourself.
I love that. I love that you stopped your shooting on yourself instantly. Yes. So we're already implementing action items. That's wonderful. And just those powerful questions. I mean, they saw value and worth in you, and you were starting to unpack some of that really, versus asking the questions to help leverage that confidence and strength in what they saw in you. So I absolutely love that. Nancy, let's transition to you. We've talked a little bit about this, but it's easy to be in self-sabotage mode as women. We just talked about a few of these things, what we go to, the shoulds. Sometimes we don't even realize that's where we've went, and it starts in a cycle, right? Yeah. So how do we start to overcome it? How do we work through that self-sabotage and maybe not noticing it?
Yeah, I love this. But, you know, and I would say most of the time, we don't even realize it. There's different statistics out there on this, but, you know, the bottom line is it goes something like this, that we have 60 to 80,000 thoughts in a day. And 90% of them are a repeat of yesterday. Wow. Now, we can't even process that many thoughts knowing that we process it, right? It's our brain. Our brain's doing that. And so most of those thoughts are in our subconscious. So they're based on those things we've been told and we've seen and we've heard. And they are going continuously in our mind. And so, yeah, what we have to do is pay attention to know that that is happening. Everything that I've experienced so far in my life has created a memory, which, you know, some people they call it neural pathways, or I won't pretend to be a neuroscientist here. I'm not, you know, but it's all a pathway in our brain, and our brain automatically goes to what we've already told ourselves or repeatedly experienced in the past. And so when we can really, what I like to call it the 3 A's. So here's another great way to remember this, right? In order to navigate that, right, the first thing is we have to be aware that that's happening. So we want to know that all day long when we're walking around, and all the things that just naturally come out of our mouth, those are coming or we say up here in our head, because a lot of times they don't come out, right? Those are coming from all the experiences we've had. So awareness is key. The next step is to acknowledge it, right? So, oh, I see that, because here's what we do. We have that thought, and we might even be aware of it, but we push it down. We go on to the next thing. I'm supposed to be doing this now, right? I should be doing that, right? Whatever. I'm comparing myself to somebody else. No, acknowledge that feeling. That's kind of like fear, right? It's your sign to, okay, it might not be a fear statement, but acknowledge that I'm feeling something here, or I'm telling myself something. Is that true? And then the last thing is to then make a conscious use. I call it ACT. So it's awareness, acknowledgement, action, right? Because now that you are aware that you're having these thoughts, you can acknowledge the thought that you're currently having. Then you could say, well, how do I want to choose to use this in this situation? So the 3 A's can really come in handy when you're kind of battling that, that these thoughts, they're going to happen no matter what, because our brain works that way, which is also very good for us, right? We want to be responsive and, living life. And so they also help us do that.
Love that. I love all these acronyms we're getting, and I'm a little remiss that we didn't put a slide of the hot winds and the AAA and the. So I hope you have your pens and pencils out and you're taking notes on all of that, because we did not give you that, and those are my takeaways from today. So thank you for that, Nancy. I am going to ask that we go to the next slide, which are the specific actions. We've given some insight that I'm going to ask these 3 ladies to share with us as we're starting to wrap out. So. Great insights, really good action items already, but I want to give specific, and these were the top 3 that you all shared with me in prepping for this. So we're going to go back to you, Amy. We're going to make sure that everybody has their action items, and we're going to have you start with finance. So what is one action you suggest taking? And I know I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit, because Amy and I work together. We focus a lot on building confidence, but specifically for women. And we talk a little bit about how men and women look at finances differently. You got into it a little bit, but can you incorporate that a little bit into your answer and action step for everybody today?
I think we're afraid to seek guidance. And that's the first part, seeking guidance, whatever that might be. And I'm sorry, it's a 2-parter. But the other one really is taking a step, no matter what that might be. And so is it creating the plan? Is it taking the small step? Whatever that is. And so create a checklist for yourself and really look to see what that is. When you're talking about the difference between, men and women and how we're thinking and all of those types of things, I think it's important to note that we, like Nancy said, are continually saying negative messages to ourselves, and we need to say positive messages to ourselves. I can do this, and that's one of the superpowers. Don't think that you'll never be a saver or that you'll never pay off your credit card debt. Think that you can, and you can make powerful changes with your mindset. And so when we're talking about all of these types of things, we're talking about the barriers, we're talking about taking action, we're talking about creating a plan and a budget and all of those things. What the overarching umbrella, Sarah, is that this is about taking a step. No matter what that might be, it is about taking that first step. And that's what's most important, I think, whatever that might be.
I love that. Thank you, Amy. And it ties to what Nancy was talking about, how we tend to, as women, stay busy and push it down. And in the beginning, with the quote you shared, or the statistic of, when we're not confident, it creates inaction. So the first step is to take action, kind of take inventory and start to talk about it, right? With somebody is what you're saying?
No matter what the action is.
Yep.
I think that some of us think that we will make the wrong action. That's why you get the advice to get the gut check. So the more we ask questions, the more we get the education, the more confident we're going to feel, the more like we have a cape on, right? Or a crown, whatever we decide it might be, to feel superpower and feel that confidence. Because the more we know about what we need to know about, whatever that is, we will feel stronger and more confident with that education.
Thank you, Amy. So well said. Denise, I'm going to go to you. What is your suggestion of action item for our audience today based on your area of expertise in this conversation?
So I would suggest to take action, and action changes things. Action changes things. So whatever act you do, it will change things. Ultimately, it will change you. So say yes to yourself today. That's the number one thing that I would suggest. But personally, something that I feel is very, very helpful that has helped me and helped others that I know is doing something called informational interviews. So where do you see yourself? If you're currently in a position or you're currently maybe running a business, whatever that is, where do you see yourself in the next 5 to 7 years? And of course, I have an acronym for this too. It's called DOT, D-O-T. This is what you have to do with your informational interviews. I suggest at least 3 of them. So the DOT is down the road, 3 to 7 years. Who is in that position? It doesn't matter if you're entering in as an entry-level worker. If your ultimate goal is to be executive director, how can I interview with that person? Because during that informational interview, you're going to find out what skills it takes. You're going to learn personally the road they're traveled and how that can help you. And in that, you're going to learn the O in the DOT, the opportunities for growth. And so in here, that's where you will get the mentors. Where do I need a mentor at? Where do I need guidance at? Where are my opportunities to grow? And so that's where I want to find out, maybe I do need a coach. Maybe I need a financial coach. Maybe I need a self-empowerment coach. Where do I need? Because down the road, our D, my goal is this, and these are some opportunities that I need to grow in. And then the T is for today. Do it today, but who is in the role today that you look up to? So that you can learn, how can I not just come in and be good, but how can I be great? There's a quote that goes, good, better, best. Never let it rest until your good is your better and your better is your best. So if you do those informational interviews with the DOT, or like I work with young people, they say, period. So what is your period? Who are your dots for your informational interviews? And so with that, take the action that was said today, because action changes things and it will change you.
Wow. I don't even have anything to say after that. That was wonderful. We should just end right there, I think. I don't know.
Agreed.
but we have to hear from our last panelist. Lenise, that was fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah,
so Nancy,
thanks.
we're going to go to you to close us out with this final action item for our listeners. And what do you want to share? What's your final action?
I actually want to try to pull this together, right? Because you may have heard this concept of our thoughts create our actions, which create our results, right? I want to back into that. You already, right now, today, you know the results you're getting, okay? So let's back away from that. So here's the results I currently have. So what have the actions been that I've been taking to get those results? Oh, yeah, okay, here's an action I took that, helped me achieve this result. Whether positive or constructive, whatever that is. Being very aware of those so that you can either do more of it if it's working or do less of it if it's not. And then if it's one of those things that isn't working, now you back into your thoughts. Well, what do I think about this? What do I believe about this? Bottom line for me, who am I comparing myself to? Oh, I've forgotten that my values. So guess what? All the advice that you've heard from us today, the bottom line is take the pieces that work for you and find the additional pieces that support you. So your thoughts create those actions which create those results. And you can back into that by analyzing where you are today and are you happy with that? And if you're happy with it, keep doing what you're doing. And if you're not, what are the actions you're taking that you want to change? And then if you have thoughts about those actions, shifting it and shifting into that positivity and moving away from the reasons why you can't. Because really, when all is said and done, you can make choices that serve you and your values in a variety of different ways. And that's what it comes down to, is choosing what's going to serve you.
That is so great. Thank you. My goodness, this is just such a powerful interaction and conversation. I think the only word I have right now is wow. So thank you so much for your time, for your knowledge, your expertise, and sharing your wisdom with us today. I have so many takeaways, but I think my biggest takeaway is that we're not in this alone. What I just heard everybody say is we have some overlap. We, as women, kind of function the same when we think about things and how we care for others. And so really, when we rally together and we have conversation, we're a force to be reckoned with, right? Yes. And when we have venues that can help bring people along, like Brava and this conversation, I also want to give a shout out to Summit. It is International Credit Union Day. We are supporting women-owned businesses at select locations in celebrating today. So stop in and get some treats from some women-owned businesses. But my question and action to all of you today is, who else do you know in your circle that could hear this message that you could bring along on this journey towards the step towards confidence, and invite them along? So thank you so much. Thank you for tuning in. And Shayna, I'm going to turn it over to you to see if we have any questions.
Yes, thank you. Sure. So many insightful takeaways. I enjoyed everything everybody had to say. And I was going to say, yes, I love this partnership that Brava has with Summit Credit Union, just because we're about empowering women, and so are you. And so I feel like this panel is really great, and we've gotten so many great takeaways in that respect. But yeah, we do have a Q&A period. So, we wanted to ask some questions that, we thought of for the panelists. So our first question is, we've heard a lot lately about setting boundaries, that being a positive thing. But how can, a lot of women still are uncomfortable saying no to various things in work, in life, whatever. But how can saying no benefit us actually in our confidence in work and in life? Any of you would like to answer that?
Wow. So setting boundaries with yourself, creating, again, those compartmentalized finances where you're like, I'm only going to spend this much on self-care. I'm only going to spend this much on holiday gifts because it's the season, right? All the sales are already out and the holiday decorations are already out at Target. Having conversations and setting boundaries with your kids, your family are really important, because that's giving yourself the gift of reducing your financial stress to be able to reallocate that money to building wealth. And that's the thing, because we want to keep ourselves out of poverty in retirement. We want to make sure that we feel confident. And to do that, you have to reduce that stress and make, like Nancy was saying, different decisions based on positive mindsets. So having conversations, setting boundaries is actually a really big gift for yourself. And other people, the way you position it, will share and possibly even start setting boundaries themselves, because you are mirroring that then. Yeah.
One of the things that really, sometimes words like this can trigger me. So I'm just going to say that boundaries is one of them. And authenticity is another one, right? Is when they become buzzwords. So a lot of times what happens is I hear people say, well, I need to set boundaries. That may or may not be true. And so I love what Amy was just saying, is that the boundaries are meant to serve you. Right? And so this is, are you currently serving yourself? And, if not, what might you like to change? Now, it's not that I don't like boundaries. I have to, I create some for myself. I don't have to, count myself. And we don't need to do anything. So sometimes people will say to you, well, you need to set a boundary. You're doing too much. Okay? I've had people say that to me. Well, wait a minute. What's too, that's your perspective on what's too much. How am I and so just being really clear on that boundaries are meant to serve you, and what you say no to, because that's one of the common things is, well, I need to say no to more. And yeah, when you say no to something that isn't serving you, that gives you more space for the things that really do, and to say yes. And so just choose wisely.
Yeah, and I would just kind of wrap that up along the lines what was already said, that boundaries should be based on your value, right? So if it's important to you, if you value it, then you have to make a decision on how you make room for it. Or, as was said, I'm making room for this, and this is important to me. So maybe I need to make room for this by letting go or releasing. I don't like to say letting go, releasing, because when you release something, you allow things to come in, right? And so let's release those things that don't serve us so that you do have time for the things that do serve you. So really, when you are doing something, think about how do you feel after that? Think about the reality of it. Now, sometimes we don't feel good, but that's because we're being stretched, right? Not because we don't want to be there. So really, when you are deciding, is this a boundary that I need to make some adjustments with, really look at how do you feel after that? What is the value that it's bringing to your life? And then make an action plan. Or no action at all. Continue going forward.
I love that because I think so much of what everybody's saying today is really just being thoughtful and living with your thoughts. And I think as women, we are always go, go, go. And so being able to just sit and be with your thoughts and your values and what is serving you is a really key message today. So thank you again. It's something that we can't hear enough, I think. So I just love that everybody is talking about that. But speaking of, empowering women and, being able to help us. Lenice, you talked a lot about, on the employment side. I was interested to know, a lot of people watching, maybe managers, managing people, or just have coworkers that are females. What can we do to empower our colleagues, or what can we do to empower the employees that work under us that are female employees and make a great workplace for women? Because we've also been talking a lot about that today as well, a great workplace for women.
So it's one thing to be invited to the table. It's another thing to have a voice at the table. So I think as managers, don't just invite them to the table, but ensure that their voice is heard. So really just create a space, a safe space where they can have conversations about their growth, about how they feel in the work environment. Is this a safe environment? Also, be proactive in their development. Speak those positive things that you see, align them to, and if it's not, like with the state, we have several different departments. Maybe it's not in your department, but is there another department that they can be connected to do those informational interviews or to do those job shadows or just to have that conversation just to see? So I think it's our responsibility, definitely if you're in a leadership role, your responsibility is to your internal candidate, which includes women, right? And so having those conversations and being aware of your own biases that you may have so that you are not being the roadblock, but you are now being a path.
Yeah, and also on the career empowerment angle, thank you for that. I was curious, Amy, if you could actually share some specific resources, because we talked about knowing your worth today. What free resources can women utilize to know their worth in terms of, researching jobs and salaries and things like that?
A couple that I thought of is Glassdoor and salary.com. You can enter in all your current job type information, your title and stuff like that, geographic region, and find that. The other thing would be definitely tapping into resources in your community. And then also looking, SummitCreditUnion.com has some checklists for just things that you might want to do financially to be able to use that, hopefully pay bump that you get. But Lenice, do you know of any other resources?
Definitely. In every area, there's a workforce development board, so you definitely can reach out to your workforce development board for questions and concerns that you have regarding your career path. There's so many resources, not just as far as knowing the salary, but opening up to different salary opportunities, right? But I definitely encourage everyone to visit Job Center of Wisconsin. So that resource right there, they don't only list open positions, but there's a salary piece in there where you can find across the state of Wisconsin what the going rate is for a particular position, whether you're entry, middle, or high. So that will help you when it comes to sharing your voice, when it comes to negotiating salaries or requesting a raise, things like that. So do your research. That is a free resource. That they have more than just that, but if you check that out, it has a widget for labor market information on jobcenterwisconsin.com.
That is amazing. I did not know about that. So thank you so much for sharing that. Super helpful advice for all of us. Well, I believe we are nearing the end of our time today. And again, loved the discussion with all of you ladies. Thank you again, Amy, Nancy, Lanice, and Sarah. Thank you for this wonderful panel discussion. We're at Summit's beautiful headquarters, and we just thank Summit again for co-hosting this with us. Now, don't forget that this discussion will actually be available as a recording as well. If you registered to watch this, you will receive the recording after this as well. And we would just like to thank you again for tuning in, and thank you to all the women today.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.